At the Big Four, the Detroit Economic Club hosted the Big Four. He had Brooks Patterson, Mayor Bang, Bob Falcano, and Paul Gillenham from Macomb County. And I remember Brooks Patterson said, and he said it jokingly, but it resonated, and I think it probably stuck with a lot of people in the audience, that it didn't really matter to him about the state of Detroit public schools until he realized it was going to negatively affect the bond rating of Oakland County. To hear him say that, Oakland County being so prosperous and having the sense, that we seem to work a little bit in silos oftentimes in the region, do you think we're kind of coming to a new realization about regionalism? Do you think some things that John Powell is talking about and others are starting to resonate?
Well, you see some of that. You see some of that with, for instance, the light rail system that's being put together. But we need to build on that. When 1/3 of the population of Detroit doesn't have a car, getting them up to the New Center area doesn't get that young man or woman to Royal Oak to go work at anywhere up there. If you don't have a car in the city of Detroit, how do you get to the airport without paying some exorbitant taxi fee or car fee? So it's a start, but we've got to move it farther and deeper and quicker. Getting back to, you asked me sort of how I got into this job. It is so, it has been frustrating to me before I got in to see that the pace with which we deal with some of these issues, and being in the role for 2 years, I'm even more frustrated. It just doesn't want to move as quick as I think it should be. Steve Spreitzer, one of my colleagues at the Roundtable, likens it to being, the biblical term being 40 years in the desert. Well, if it's another 40 years, I may not be around, but that's, the pace has to pick up because we're just too late on all this.
Okay, so if you could pick one thing that you could pick the pace up on and take it from point A to point B with your work at the Michigan Roundtable, what would it be?
It would be race relations. I mean, I know we focus on, you hear a lot of black, white, but it's everything. It's, our Native American brothers and sisters, going back to boarding school issues. It's a Hispanic population. They have, immigration issues sometimes. We've heard in Troy, driving while Asian, the Asian populations had issues. So I think we need to tackle the proverbial elephant in the room, and we don't hear much about that. And it's at the core of everything. It's at the core of transportation. It's at the core of housing. It's at the core of education. Then I read an op-ed in the New York Times, and written by the Secretary of Education, and I should say he was quoted in it, and he said, if Dr. King were around today, he'd be pleased with the progress that has been made in the area of civil rights, but he'd also be angered at the fact that city kids, African American kids, don't have, the classes, the college prep classes, that they're in substandard schools, that there's a high rate of African American males being disciplined, either suspended or expelled from school. And if I had one thing, I would really want people to understand that that's at the core of a lot of this. A lot of history is at the core of this. And if we look at history, it illuminates how we got here today. And it's not about blaming. A lot of my people, white people, say, well, Tom, you're blaming it. I said, no, you're not. I'm not blaming you. I'm asking people to take responsibility and accountability. And whether we realize it or not as white people, we do benefit from that privilege of years ago, because I'll hear, oh, that was my grandfather's time, or that was during my dad's time. I don't disagree with that, but here I am today. I'm a white male Christian heterosexual over 50, and I'm dripping in the privilege, and that's what we have to understand.
Okay, so going back to the 1D scorecard and being able to measure some of the things we talked about, how do we measure quantitatively? What are the measurements that are important for us to be monitoring to be able to see progress? If you're talking about race relations, sometimes, when you talk about it as relations, it's soft. I think it was Dr. Carl Gregory said to me, well, I'm not really sure that I care if a white person likes me, but I want to be able to buy a house wherever I want to buy a house, and I want my house to be worth just as much.
Carl's right on. Dr. Gregory's right on, as always, the distinguished professor that he is. But that's true. I mean, you know, the wealth disadvantage here in the city is about 11 to 1 in favor if you're white. And let's face it, you know, most people, about 80% of a person's wealth is tied up in their home. So at a time now when, you know, if people are looking at college education, they want to borrow against it so they can send their kids to college, can't do that. Want to pass it along as it, you know, as an asset and inheritance, well, you can do that, but it's maybe worthless. So I think that the factors are, you know, indexed, you know, community representation. What do police forces look like? Are they representative of who they police? Are school boards representative, and teachers? Again, housing, affordable housing. I would agree with Dr. Gregory on that. Transportation. I mean, are we providing citizens that don't have a car access to, you know, places of work, places of leisure and entertainment, or getting to the airport? Those are some of the things we have to measure ourselves by.